Thank you, Simon. All right. Whoops. We bring you over here with me. Okay, welcome to a quick screencast reviewing the web of life. This was the last unit that we did in biology, and we did it quickly. I fully admit that. All right, so by the end of this quick screencast, and by looking at your POGL and at your notes, you should be able to describe what's going on in this picture. All right, here we go. Here is the one I made way back in 2004, and that I've used every single year of teaching. So the sun is going to shine down on plants or autotrophs. They're called autotrophs because they can make their own food. Wouldn't it be cool to be a plant? Plants make their own food because they're autotrophs in a process called photosynthesis. Photo means light and synthesis means to make. And what it's going to make is glucose and oxygen. Yummy. And oh yes, we love to breathe oxygen. Okay, plants and animals being heterotrophs, meaning that we have to take from something else, break down glucose in a process called cellular respiration. So a misconception alert, a lot of my students in the past didn't think that plants had to do cellular respiration, but they do. They need to break down their own glucose that they make. They break down glucose and it gives off carbon dioxide, water, and energy in the form of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Students, notice how the products of cellular respiration are the reactants of photosynthesis. The products of photosynthesis are the reactants of cellular respiration. The products of one are the reactants of the other, and that's why it is a cycle. So let's go on and see the chemical version of the web of life. And this will really show you what we're talking about. Carbon dioxide plus water plus sunlight in plants in the chloroplast gives you glucose and oxygen. Notice how we take that glucose and oxygen in cellular respiration. We use that to break down glucose into carbon dioxide, water, and energy. All right, these are going to be the byproducts of it, and what we're really trying to get out of cellular respiration is energy. We can't just use glucose, we have to break it down step by step. So the products of one, glucose and oxygen, are the reactants of another. Notice how the products of cellular respiration, carbon dioxide and water, are the reactants of photosynthesis. I cannot stress strongly enough that you should go through that one-page POGL that I gave you to review this. All right, here is a nice GIF from the Amoeba Sisters, who I support on YouTube, showing you how they're related. You should go through this GIF and make sure that you can explain each part. Notice how it's showing that the reactants of cellular respiration, those were the products of photosynthesis, and the products of cellular respiration, they were the reactants of photosynthesis. This is why it's so important. All right, so we've gone over that cycle. Now, what is ATP? ATP is an energy molecule in our cells. ATP is small, versatile, and we can use it to power things in our cell. ATP is like a fully charged battery. It's like when your cell phone, when you're on full juice, you love ATP. When it's used up, it's called ADP. Look at the difference between the two. ADP has 2 of these P's, whereas ATP has 3 of the P's. What do the P's stand for? They stand for phosphates. So when they have 3 of them, you're charged, and when you have 2 of them, you're not charged. Here's how you use the energy. You break that 3rd phosphate off, and that's going to release energy to power something in the cell. It's a little more complicated than that with enthalpy and bonding and how that works. But for our purposes, when you break off that 3rd phosphate, you release some energy to do work in the cell. All right, so we're going to constantly cycle between the 2 of these to make more. Here's the cycle. So this I actually didn't show in class, but I'll show next time. We get energy from food. We break it down. So we break down that crafty kitchen pizza, and we make ATP. ATP goes off to do work. Well, what kind of work might it do? It might move a protein, might help you grow, might help a cell divide. It can do lots of things in your body. Once we use it up, it's going to become ADP again. Before we can use it to make energy again, it has to become ATP again. The way that ADP, adenosine diphosphate, becomes ATP is through a process called cellular respiration, which we went over in the previous slide. So it's going to be converted to ATP so that way it can go off and do work in the cell. This is a cycle. So you notice that we're using a lot of cycles in your body to get things done. Here it is again, and I want to point something out right here. When we take ADP and a phosphate and combine them together to make ATP, it's a dehydration synthesis reaction. Dehydration because it spits out a water molecule, and synthesis because you're putting them together. When you break apart that ATP, it's a hydrolysis reaction. You're going to insert a water molecule to help break this apart so that energy can be given off. So we remember way back in the beginning in biochemistry, we reviewed dehydration synthesis reactions and hydrolysis reactions, and this is a good example of it. All right, students, what should you get out of this? You should be able to go back. Let's go back to the first slide. And hopefully you should be able to explain the web of life and why plants are so important to us. Now, it's a little bit of a misnomer that plants have to have us to live. Remember, there's other sources of carbon dioxide in the world. But let's just view it simply. Sun, it's a beautiful thing. It shines down on plants. Plants can take that sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, and they can make carbohydrates in a beautiful process called photosynthesis. You read a little bit about that in Chapter 8, and we'll go into much more detail after the winter break. We eat those plants, we eat the carbohydrates, and we make ATP through the process of cellular respiration. We also use some of that to heat ourselves. And we're going to give, and it's not shown here in this figure, but we're going to give carbon dioxide and water back to the plants. All right, students, study hard for your exam. Come in with any questions, and I look forward to seeing you get a great grade on your exam.